All right, good morning, everybody. TG Watkins here. It's January 17th when I'm recording this. Hope everybody's doing well out there. And starting off our shortened week since we had a 3-day weekend with Monday being Martin Luther King Day. And yeah, so wanted to bring you guys over here. It's funny, it's interesting, it's still twitter.com up here, even though there's a lot of change over to X. But man, I kind of miss the old name just because it was easier to say. And you could say that you could post a tweet. And now what do? We post an X, or we have a post on X. I don't know. It's kind of changed the lexicon. But some of the things I've been posting are signals that the Moxie indicator has been giving us, meaning we need to be careful out there. And we've been pulling some trades off, making sure we stay a little bit protected. And some of them are the semis. So yes, of course, there are stocks that are still moving up during this time, but the majority are moving down. And I want to show you guys kind of what that looks like. If you come over here and we look at the breadth indicator, this is the number of stocks. Let's see, there you go. Over their 20-day and their 50-day SMA, and you can see this thing has just been taking a nosedive, which, it's kind of what we've been expecting and looking for, and this is what needs to happen in order for us to build room for the next move to the upside or the next cycle. Yeah, I mean, you just kind of think about it. What's the, ebb, flow, or flow and ebb, flow, ebb, flow, ebb. There's a lot of ebbing, and then we had our big flow, and now we're ebbing again. So the market just goes in cycles, goes in waves. And that's why we look at these indicators to help us determine when that is going to be happening. We are also finally starting to see the number of stocks over their 50-day SMA start to come down. And I can show you examples of what that looks like. But again, to circle back here, looking at some of these posts that I have, if we look at the SOXX, and we come over here, let's look at that. You can see that we have had, there you go, price over the hourly 50, but notice that the Moxie indicator is below 0. So this is something that when I was making my weekly video for the Moxie subscribers, so if you guys are interested, come sign up and check that out. But we were looking at this, and if you did not have the Moxie indicator, there's a good chance you'd be looking at this and say, hey, this looks really pretty great because price has gotten over the 50, and look at that, it looks like it wants to follow the 50, and maybe we should go in on it. And you know what? Yesterday probably would have been kind of a sucker move. We saw AMD up, we saw NVIDIA up, and as I said, of course, there are stocks that are still moving up during this time, but not the majority. And you could see that, yes, it even tried to break out like that, but it was a false move. And the Moxie indicator was the thing that was keeping you safe on something like that, telling you, hey, the likelihood of this working out is not so high. And even though it kind of came in, it looked like it wanted to follow the hourly 50. Look what it's doing now. It's now back below the hourly 50. And again, Moxie indicator below 0 telling you not right now. And then you can look at the SPY. It's doing the same thing. And you can see here, price was over the 50, Moxie indicator below 0. And this one, remember I put a post on Twitter or poll on Twitter saying, hey, what's going to happen when the S&P comes into the daily 21 EMA? And it was literally 50-50. It was crazy to see. It was actually 50-50. And this is so insane. It was 50-50 on Twitter. It was also 50-50 in the Moxie room. So pretty amazing how we got those numbers. And the question was, is it going to bounce or is it going to flag? Well, we got our answer. It bounced, but it was not a continuation. So you can see here we got stopped right there at a previous high, but we basically knew that was happening because price was over the 50 and the Moxie indicator was below 0. Same situation that we're seeing with the SOXX. And we can also see this with the the NASDAQ. Same deal. You have price up over the 50, the Moxie indicator below 0. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you need to short it. We do have a position on to see if we can take advantage of anything, but we also have to be prepared that this could just go sideways. It could chop around a little bit. It could come all the way back down to its previous low. That's a possibility. But an inverse trampoline move in the right circumstances can mean a short entry. Otherwise, it just means don't go long right now. And I think that is, for me, the biggest thing to be paying attention to is, at least for the indices and something like the SOXX, don't go long right now. All right, then we look at something like the IWM, and it's a little bit different, isn't it? Well, let's kind of talk through this one. And so brighter side, yeah, I see. Let's see. While the IWM, we have the IWM at the daily 50, concerned because the hourly isn't looking so hot. Potential foreshadowing of what's to come. Well, the easiest thing here was basically price flagged right into and then got rejected by a downtrending hourly 50 with the Moxie indicator below zero. And there was a point right here. I wanted to see if we were going to find some support and if we were going to actually bounce a little bit. Kind of, I was wondering if the IWM was going to do what the S&P did, to where, it gets over the hourly 50 and maybe we go up like that. And so on this morning, I forget what day that was, maybe it was like Thursday or something. And whenever that bounced up like that, I did make a post that said, "Hey, let's watch, because we are getting price over the hourly 50, but we have to make sure it actually stays up there." So it just said, "Hey, we need to watch this closely today because there might be a decision, a change in decision point." And then by the end of the day, it fell back down below the hourly 50, and the Moxie indicator continued down. So, just it was more of the same, continuation to the downside. And then, brighter side, as far as, yeah, we could say that price is to the daily 50. Will it go further? It's possible. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. I still view this as a pullback in an uptrend. I mean, it's hard to argue what is the direction of the daily 50 and how far away did price get from that 50. So really all it's doing is just coming back to test support. Now, if this is really going to be bad and worse and it's going to keep going lower, fine, we'll keep watching that and we'll see it. But for the most part, November, December was a great run. In fact, too great. That's the problem, is that everything got way, way, way too high, and now we're having to correct. And so that's what January right now has been about, is just correcting all of that. We can also see that, and I put a line here, but we do have the 50 here, but we also have some price action, price consolidation in through there. And so, not that we filled a gap, but we definitely filled a single time frame, basically, and basically a straight up kind of move. And so it's very weak when you get something like that, and you can see that it's then come through there. And now I want to see if there's some sort of confluence between that price action and the daily 50, to where we start to see some support and some strength. It's too early to see it clearly. Price is still in a downtrend on even the 15-minute time frame. So until we see price start to go up on some of these lower time frames, just expect some more downside or some more chop. But eventually, the pullback, the momentum of the pullback will subside, and we'll find some strength, and we'll have to kind of see what we do. Yeah, so then also, brighter side, you're saying that it would be nice to have the 200 as a backstop. Yeah. Now, it's funny you say backstop, because this is actually one of the terms that I use, is a trampoline move is when price is below the 50, but the Moxie indicator is above zero. So if the IWM price does dip below the 50, we have a potential trampoline move. The other thing that I typically see fairly often is that when price comes down and it does a trampoline move, and then it bounces off of the 200 and then moves up, that is a trampoline move with a backstop. It's almost like hitting, I don't know, like a basketball against the backstop on the basketball hoop, and it comes down and it just bounces right off. So again, I'm pretty excited for what's going to be happening after this pullback. We just have to kind of go through it, like I said in the beginning of today's session, ebbs and flows. That's what the market's going to be doing, and that's what we're just kind of sitting here waiting for, writing it out. And if we look at the monthly and the weekly, I mean, geez, like, by golly gosh, look how not only third ATR, but look how far away from that moving average that the IWM did. So what are we doing? Well, we're just waiting for price to come back down, find some support, and we'll have to see eventually when it wants to go back up. You can see that before, it has not found that support. So we do need to keep an eye on that, make sure it actually does it. Don't want to jump in prematurely on something like this, but this is looking pretty good. Honestly, I think that's looking pretty good, and I would like to see if this comes down, find some support, and then we can continue to the upside over the course of time. All right, so some of the other names that I've been looking around and kind of talking about, Roku is another one. We've been waiting for this thing to come down. And then brighter side, as far as your question about some foreshadowing, maybe Roku could be a little bit of that, because Roku this position of Roku looks a lot like the IWM, doesn't it? I mean, almost exactly like it. It shot straight up, very far away from the 50. It's been pulling back, and it did actually get below the daily 50. And you could also see, just like the IWM, it had this this cluster of price, some of this activity, and now it's right inside of it. So yeah, but has there been a setup? No. There's only been some divergence, but divergence is not a trigger. And so we just continue to wait. And you can see even the last time that price got over the hourly 50, it just didn't hold. So like I showed you guys with the SOXX and the NASDAQ and the SPY about these inverse trampoline moves, this is also an inverse trampoline move. And anytime that price is over the 50 and the MOXY indicator is below 0, it's an inverse trampoline move, and price should not be over the 50 if the MOXY indicator is below 0. So there's one, there's one, there's one. So we just continue to wait. We just wait. I mean, unless you want to be short on something like this, you just wait for the next viable opportunity. Let's see, Roblox. This is another one we've kind of been talking about over the course of time. And it did actually move up like right after earnings. Here was earnings, it jumped up, and I got to say, it did move up further than I expected it. So I didn't take that trade. I was kind of wondering if it was going to run into resistance here, but it continued to move up. Well, lo and behold, we're actually right back to where it was for earnings. So unless you were a very short-term trader and you decided to take this trade, then you really didn't miss anything, because look, it's right back to where it began. And brighter side, to your point where you were asking about falling below the 50 and using the 200 as a backstop, well, there is a possibility that Roblox could do a trampoline move on the daily chart with a 200 backstop. Of course, we can't prove it yet. It's still too early. This thing's still pulling back, but it's one of those things that as it develops and day by day goes on, we could be seeing if that happens. But yeah, very interesting. No worse off than where price was after earnings. And so if you were like, oh man, I totally missed that move. Well, look at this. It's right back to where a decent opportunity to where you can get into this again. So we'll just have to be patient, wait for these things to turn around. And you can see Roblox also, just like IWM, ran right smack into the underside of a downtrending hourly 50 and continued to get rejected by it. So yeah, we just have to wait for these things to turn around. Let's see, Upstart, same deal. I mean, a lot of these things are kind of all looking the same. They're looking like the IWM. So, they travel in packs and they bring their friends. There's your MOXY price trigger. And in fact, you can see there's your double top, there's your negative divergence. And it too ran right smack into the underside of the hourly 50, MOXY indicator below 0. So that continued to move down. And then on the daily time frame, same kind of deal. It came down to the 50, but it didn't hold. And this is why I tell people and subscribers, traders, those who like the way that I trade and show things, is you can't just blindly buy at the daily 50 or at the 50. I like to use the next lower time frame to confirm that. And what you can see is through here, notice how the hourly chart never gave you any kind of bullish or long entry signal set up, anything like that. There wasn't anything there. It continued to get rejected by those moving averages with the MOXY indicator below 0. So that was your heads up or clue, your guidance that price was going to continue to fall below the daily 50. So yeah, at this point, just continue to wait, continue to wait. On the 15-minute time frame, the only thing I could kind of point out to see is that we do have price down and we do have some positive divergence on the 15-minute time frame. And you can see there's some there. You could even see on this last one, and the MOXY indicator started to go flat. So eventually this will kick in. Eventually these things should be good, viable, I don't know if they can call them dips at this point, but good pullbacks. These will eventually be pullbacks that we can buy. And if this market wants to go back up, then this will be great opportunities. We just have to be patient and wait for this cycle to do its thing. And the first place we'll see it is on the 15-minute time frame. So we just got to be patient. All right, so that's Upstart. Let's see, LMND. Yeah, and I've been waiting for this one for a long time. All the way, you guys can see, even all the way back here, I was talking about it, and I said, yeah, I just don't know if I really want to go long here. This is kind of the same thing with Roblox. Like, notice how LMND didn't really get past its previous high. That's what I thought Roblox was going to do. But as it turns out, Roblox went a little bit further like this. Okay, that's fine. You can't catch everything. But I knew to wait. I knew to be careful on the long side because why? Well, because they both eventually pulled back to the daily 50. And you can see that even with LMND, or sorry, yeah, LMND, that you are still, no better off than just shortly after earnings. So it really hasn't missed anything unless you are a very short-term trader. Then you could trade, little pieces, little up moves like that. But otherwise, these things have pulled back again with a potential trampoline move. We have price below the 50, the Moxie indicator above 0. That is not a confirmed entry yet. That is not a confirmed signal. It's just a potential. And in fact, you could see the opposite. Here was price over the 50 and the Moxie indicator below 0. So that was telling you kind of on the near term, no, this thing's not ready. It's still going to move down and you have to give it some time. So yeah, lots of consistency out there as far as these things happening. Let's see, AI. Yeah, AI kind of a lot of hype as it turns out. Let me kind of see in through here. Now, I don't want to give any false hope, but I'm curious to see about this double bottom. Okay, just something to watch for. We'll have to see if that does anything, but otherwise, you can see here on the weekly chart, you got the weekly 8 crossing below the weekly 21, so that's not good. And you can see that price, it was following the weekly 50 pretty well, but then broke the weekly 50. So, that's not good yet. That's not good for now. And then in through here, let's see, it just didn't hold. There was earnings, it shot up, and then look what it did. It started to then get under and follow a downtrending hourly 50 again with the Moxie indicator below 0. So we're talking a lot about inverse trampoline moves. Well, we were talking a lot about those because this market has been pulling back and moving down. And so what do we see? Well, we start seeing kind of those bearish indicators, bearish signs. Look at that. There's price over the 50, Moxie indicator below 0. How about this? There's price over the 50. There's the Moxie indicator below 0. Inverse trampoline moves. So yeah, well, we've been seeing quite a few of that. We'll just have to see next go around if or when the market decides to move back up again. Is something like this going to work? I don't know. We'll have to see if this double bottom actually does something. But for now, there are no signals on that. Some of the stronger names, we've kind of been looking at net for the most part, have been just kind of, I'd say mostly, they pulled back, but now they're kind of mostly flagging sideways. So these might be names that you guys want to keep an eye on as they develop. And you can see also, like I showed you with the SOXX and SPY and the NASDAQ, not to, don't go long. Don't go long. These at least give you signals to say, don't go long. This is not ready. This is not ready for a long. Save your money. If you want to go short, fine. You can do that. But otherwise, if you're just trying to find places to buy and get in on these moves, not right there. Price over the 50, the Moxie indicator below 0. That's an inverse trampoline move, and it's just not ready. All right, let's take a look at APP. Lots of sideways chop. Well, not terrible. Let's kind of look here. So, and rainy days, I'll put it two ways. It's either one, going to go sideways like this, and it's going to use the weekly 21 as support, and eventually it'll break out. Could do that. Or it might need to do what Squarespace did. You see the similarities? Notice how Squarespace was also following its weekly 21 until it didn't, and eventually needed to pull back to its weekly 50. Okay, so I'm just going to give you two things to look for in case it goes one way versus the other. That way you will be prepared. And then you can see that with Squarespace, right in through here, you see how price was over the daily 50, but notice how the Moxie indicator was below 0. That was your heads up that this wasn't really going to be working out to the upside. And that you needed to be careful. And so sure enough, it started to pull back. It was very choppy at the time, so nothing to really, it was very challenging because it was so choppy. And then if we look at APP, what are we seeing? Well, it may not exactly be ready yet either. You can see the Moxie indicator below 0 so far. Price has been over the 50, not quite ready. The only difference that I'll say is this looks better than Squarespace. It did put in a double bottom. It's putting in a higher low. Even the Moxie indicator is starting to move up, and we are sitting right here with 8 over the 21 on top of the 50. So if APP is going to move up, we really need to see it engage with some of these moving averages. So if it's going to go, this should be the area. And if it's not going to go, well, then it's going to break right where it should go. Does that make sense? So if it's going to work, if it follows the rules, it respects the guidelines. If it's not going to work, then it falls apart. It doesn't do what it should be doing, and then it just kind of does everything else. So it is looking pretty decent, but it has to prove itself. And then DKNG, yeah, I do think DKNG is going to be a long eventually. It got overbought, just like everything else, overbought. And now we're down to the weekly 21, which is also previous support right there. And so, yes, I do think eventually this will go higher. And the question is just when. Here is our double bottom. There's our positive divergence. And yeah, look at that. We are getting a Moxie price trigger. So yeah, at this point, I would be keeping a close eye on this. My dad was looking at this one, if that gives you guys any extra peace of mind. But yeah, my dad's looking at buying this one. And what I would like to see at some point is price actually engage with and confirm support of the hourly 50, not just getting over it. I want to see it actually follow the hourly 50 because we have seen numerous times where it can get over the 50 and then it just doesn't hold. So yeah, keep watching that for that. But DKNG is definitely on my list. All right, guys. Well, thanks for your time. And I'm going to be hanging out in the Moxie room if anybody has any questions. If not, come on over. You can check out the Twitter page that I have and the Profit Pilot website. Let's see. And then we'll kind of, all right, guys.